You ever have that one neighbor who just can't stand to see you happy? Well, that's Karen, our self-appointed HOA president and neighborhood dictator. The woman has binoculars glued to her face more than she has coffee in her mug. It all started on a Saturday morning when I finally decided to build the deck. I'd been dreaming about for years. Nothing fancy, just a clean wooden platform, perfect for barbecues and morning coffee. I'd spent months saving up, drawing designs, and even checking the HOA guidelines to make sure I wasn't breaking any rules. Everything was by the book. By the end of the weekend, the deck stood proudly behind my house, smooth cedar planks, sturdy railing, and a fresh coat of sealant glistening in the sun. My wife loved it. My kids were already running circles around it. But then, she appeared. Karen strutted across her yard, HOA binder in hand like it was a badge of honor. "Excuse me," she called out, voice sharp as a whistle. "You can't just build things without approval." I told her I'd submitted the design weeks ago, and the HOA hadn't raised a single issue. But that wasn't good enough for her. "That deck ruins the uniform look of the neighborhood," she snapped. "It has to go." I laughed at first, thought she was joking. But when I saw her pull out her phone and start snapping pictures, I knew it wasn't a bluff. Within 24 hours, I got a formal notice from the HOA, demanding that I tear the entire thing down or face daily fines. I couldn't believe it. My deck wasn't violating anything. I'd followed every rule, but Karen wanted power, and she was determined to make an example out of me. I called the HOA office myself. They confirmed my permit had been approved, but apparently, a member had raised new concerns that required reevaluation. And that member was, you guessed it, Karen. That night, I sat on my deck staring at the stars, angry but calm. If she wanted a war, she'd get one. Because I wasn't just going to defend my deck. I was going to make it bigger, bolder, and better than ever. The next morning, I started sketching something new. A plan that would drive Karen absolutely crazy. When someone tells me I can't do something, especially when I know I'm in the right, that's the fastest way to make sure I do it twice as hard. So, while Karen spent her morning marching up and down the street, waving her HOA rulebook like a sword, I was sitting at my kitchen table sketching out the new design. My plan? If she wanted the deck gone, I'd give her something she could really complain about. The new deck wouldn't just be bigger, it would be twice as big, with built-in seating, LED lighting, and a small outdoor kitchen. I even planned a pergola with hanging, plants to make it look like something straight, out of a home magazine. I called my buddy Mike, a contractor who'd helped me with the first build. When I told him what I wanted to do, he laughed so hard he nearly dropped his coffee. "You're insane, man," he said. "But I love it." We started early the next weekend. I didn't hide it. I wanted Karen to see every nail, every beam, every plank go into place. And oh, she saw it all right. By Saturday afternoon, she was pacing at the edge of her yard, phone in hand, recording everything like she was collecting evidence for a court case. At one point, she yelled over, "You're making it worse for yourself." I smiled and shouted back, "No, Karen, I'm making it better." An hour later, a police cruiser pulled up in front of my driveway. Of course, Karen had called them. 2 officers got out, both looking slightly amused. One of them asked, "Sir, are you building something without HOA approval?" I handed them a copy of my permit and the HOA's approval letter. The officer scanned it, nodded, and turned to Karen. "Ma'am, everything looks fine here." Her face turned red. But it's bigger!" "That's not what he submitted." The officer shrugged. "Unless the HOA changes the rules, there's nothing illegal here." Karen stormed off, muttering something about lawyers and community standards. I couldn't help but grin. That night, I worked late, cutting wood under the warm glow of string lights, humming to myself. Every hammer strike felt like victory. By the time the sun rose, half the new deck was already complete, stretching wide across my backyard like a wooden stage of defiance. I wasn't just building a deck anymore. I was building a statement. By the time my new deck was nearly finished, Karen had gone from annoyed to furious. You could almost see the steam rising off her head every time she stepped outside. And honestly, I think that fueled me even more. She'd already tried calling the police, the HOA office, and even the city inspector, none of whom found a single thing wrong with what I was doing. But Karen wasn't the kind of person who gave up easily. No, she was plotting something bigger. One Monday morning, I woke up to the sound of hammering. Not from my yard, but from hers. When I stepped outside, I saw Karen and a couple of workers putting up a massive privacy screen, right, along the property line facing my deck. It was nearly 10 feet tall, made of ugly gray panels that looked like they were ripped off an industrial building. It completely blocked the sunlight on one side of my deck. I just stood there, jaw open, trying to process it. "Morning, neighbor," she called sweetly. "Figured if you're going to build a monstrosity, I should protect my view." My wife came out, equally stunned. "Can she even do that?" she whispered. I wasn't sure, but I had a feeling she hadn't bothered checking any rules. So I called the HOA office again. This time, I asked for the compliance officer directly. I explained what Karen was doing, sent photos, and within an hour, I got a call back. Mr. Daniels, the man said, Karen did not submit any plans for that structure. It's actually against code due to its height. We'll be sending her a notice immediately. Oh, I couldn't wait to see her reaction. The next day, I watched from my deck as a white HOA truck pulled up to Karen's driveway. The officer handed her a thick envelope. She opened it, read a few lines, and her face dropped. She stormed back inside without a word. 10 minutes later, she came back out and started yelling at the workers to take the panels down. The sound of drills and clattering metal filled the air, and it was music to my ears. That night, I stood on my half-finished deck, sipping a cold drink, enjoying the open view again. I thought that would be the end of it, but the next morning, I found something in my mailbox. An anonymous complaint to the city, claiming my deck was built dangerously close to the property line. Karen wasn't finished. She was going for the knockout punch. The next morning, I stood on my deck holding that anonymous complaint letter, and I couldn't help but laugh. Dangerously close to the property line, it said. Yeah, right. Karen's handwriting wasn't on the letter, but her fingerprints were all over it. Still, I had to take it seriously. So I called the city inspector and scheduled a visit. If Karen wanted to play games, I was going to play smarter. 2 days later, the inspector arrived, a calm, older guy named Mr. Lewis, who clearly had seen his fair share of petty neighbor feuds. I handed him all my paperwork, permits, HOA approvals, and measurements. He paced around the deck with his clipboard, taking notes and snapping photos. Finally, he turned to me and said, "Everything here looks perfectly fine. Actually, you've built this with more precision than most contractors I inspect." I couldn't help but grin. "So no issues?" He shook his head. "None at all. I'll file the report today. You're cleared." Perfect. I offered him a bottle of water, thanked him, and watched him drive off, just in time for Karen to step outside pretending to check her mail. "Oh, hello," she called with that fake cheeriness. "Was that a city inspector?" "It was," I said, smiling. "He says everything's perfect." "You were worried for nothing." Her jaw tightened. She muttered something about neighborhood values and stormed back inside again. I thought about letting it go right there, but then I remembered every headache she'd caused, every petty note, every fake complaint. She needed to learn. So I went online and submitted a proposal to the HOA, a community event to promote good neighborly relations. The plan? A deck-warming barbecue hosted on my brand-new, twice-as-big deck. Open invitation to the whole neighborhood, including Karen. When the flyer went out, people were thrilled. Everyone showed up, kids, couples, retirees chatting, laughing, eating burgers, enjoying the music. Even the HOA board members came by to congratulate me on the craftsmanship. Karen peeked through her blinds for the first hour, scowling like she'd swallowed a lemon. But finally she walked over, pretending she wanted to check the noise levels. I handed her a plate of food and said, "You're welcome to join, Karen. After all, this is our neighborhood." She hesitated, looked around at everyone smiling, and finally took the plate. From that day forward, she never filed another complaint. In fact, she started waving whenever she saw me outside. Maybe she realized control wasn't everything. And as for me, every morning I sit on that deck with my coffee, watching the sunrise and thinking, sometimes the best revenge is just living better. If you enjoyed this crazy HOA story, make sure to subscribe, like, and drop a comment about what you would have done in my place. Your support helps me bring more real stories like this every week.